Hello everybody, welcome to this talk on teamwork. So what I want to do is just think about what a team is and what stages a team goes through before they're successfully performing. So what is a team? A team is a group of people who have shared goals, who circulate information between each other, who have specific roles, who manage materials and have processes and things like that, who depend on each other to complete tasks, and respect each other and things like that. That is the nature of a team. Why teams are so important is because if we look at what employers want now, employers want people who can communicate effectively, who can understand the nature of the organisation, who work well in teams, who are creative, who have good oral and verbal and visual presentation skills, who can write well and can listen well and things like that. So these are all skills that can be developed within a team. The model of team development I'm going to look at was developed by an American businessman called Bruce Tuckman. So Tuckman has 4 stages of team development. His 4 stages are called forming, storming, norming, and performing. So Tuckman was great at thinking of these rhyming 4-stage models. So forming, storming, norming and performing are the 4 stages. Forming is when the team first comes together. Storming is when they realise teamwork is a little bit harder than they thought it was. Norming is when they move beyond their concerns and begin to really function as a team. And then performing is where they're functioning as a high crack unit, high performance, excellent team. So the first stage we'll look at is forming. So what's forming about? Forming is building the team. It's defining what the team wants to do. It's defining the roles of the team. It's starting to develop trust within the team and deciding really how we're going to do things. And with a lot of teams, they are focused on a specific task. So to define what the task is and what information we might need to undertake that task. As somebody who has a big interest in learning styles and personality types, I suppose now is a time to just mention the idea that different people are different. This might seem like a radical concept, but nonetheless there is a body of research to support the notion that different people are different. And indeed they differ in terms of their personality often. So there are many models that represent how different personalities can be represented. I'm a big fan of the work of Swiss psychologist Carl Jung. And Carl Jung was a big chum of American psychologist William James. They used to write letters over and back to each other and discuss this issue of personality type. As a consequence of their work in 1913, Carl Jung published a book called Personality Types, where he discussed 4 dimensions or 4 categories of people. Each category has a range within it. The first category is concerned with where you get your energy from. Some people get their energy in a group, whereas other people get their energy alone. So people who need quiet time to rev up, we call them introverted. And people who get their energy from groups, we call those extroverted. The next category that Jung created was where you focus your attention, or how do you receive information. So some people can only receive information one sense at a time. They can be looking at something or listening to something or smelling something or touching something, but they can only take in one sense at a time. We call those sensors, so they have one sense at a time, whereas some people can take in all of their senses together, can listen, look, touch, smell, and taste and take all of that information in together, and we call them intuitors, because they're able to use, we see it as intuition, where you can bring all your different senses together. Another dimension Jung looked at is how, once you've taken in that information, how do you make decisions with it in your head? Some people make decisions with their brain and some people with their heart. So people who make decisions with their brain, we might call them thinkers, and people who make decisions with their heart, we might call them feelers. So some people, all you need to do is give them a good sentimental story and they'll be on your side. The last type that Jung described, I would say, is how you structure your behaviour or organise things. So some people are very organised, and if they have 12 weeks to do a task, They'll divide the task up into 12 parts and do one part a week. Whereas most other people, I believe, are much more like not do anything for 11 weeks and then do the whole task in the last week. So we call people who break tasks up judgers, and we call people who leave it till the end perceivers. We don't need to worry about the terminology, just to say that some people like to be in groups and some people don't. Some people can take in information from all of their senses, and some people can only take in information from one of their senses. Some people make decisions with their head, some with their heart, and some people leave things to the last minute, and some people like to do things in chunks. If you're in a team and half of the team like to do things in chunks and half of the team like to do things to the last minute, that's very uncomfortable in terms of working with people who have the opposite kind of way of structuring behaviour compared to you. But as long as we can acknowledge and understand that there are different people, and we ensure that the tasks are structured in such a way that each person that with their individual requirements are compensated for or allowed to do their thing in, then we're going to have a successful team. One way of doing this, which I think is very effective, is for teams to create a charter or a contract or an agreement where they say, this is how we're going to work as a team, this is how often we'll communicate, this is who's responsible for what things, here are a list of the key deliverables we have to do, here are the milestones, here are the metrics that we measure how successfully we did things, here are some risks we need to worry about, and here's the scope or boundaries of the project we're working on. And a team charter or team contract can really help in terms of ensuring that everything runs smoothly within the team and that there's a clear understanding of roles and responsibilities. So if you just go onto the internet and look for a team charter, you can find plenty of samples online. So that's the first stage of team development, where we're just forming the team. The next stage is called storming, where we know that the task maybe is slightly more difficult than we thought. We're having worries about some conflict and worries about whether we can succeed in the task, and maybe we're having some issues with collaboration or resistance to completing the task. So if we're having those issues in the storming phase, we need to sit down and understand what are our goals and what are our objectives in terms of this, and can we clarify whose responsibilities it is to achieve these things and who has the roles that need to do this stuff, and really discuss how decision making may occur and how communication should be occurring, and see if everybody's got the interpersonal skills, the ability to communicate effectively. So very often on teams we might agree in a consensus-based fashion. So if there's 5 members on the team and 3 of them decide we should do one thing and 2 of them decide we should do something else, with the consensus base, the majority rules, but the other 2 must agree to go along with it. They can't spend the next couple of weeks moaning how they didn't get their way. If we're saying it's consensus, that means everybody goes along with the decision of the majority. It is important, I think, in the storming phase to separate out what are problem issues from people issues. Very often the challenge or task or project we're working on, there are issues there that get conflated with issues about people. So is it that this person isn't doing their job, or that they're not able to do their job because there's a stage in the process blocking them for doing it? So always be very kind and soft on people, and always be very hard and tough on the problem. Soft on people, hard on the problem is the way for teams to effectively win and run in a smooth fashion. Always understand the needs of the individual and what is motivating them, and then you're able to ensure that you will get the best out of members of the team. In the storming phase as well, just clarify what is being required to do, what people have agreed to do in the team charter or contract, and what is being done. And always restate and always go back to that team charter for everything. Sometimes teams start gossiping about each other and create what is called team toxicity, where lots of time is wasted saying bad things about other people and creating unnecessary friction, where you just need to focus on the task. So if you're feeling there's a team like that, you're in a team like that, you need to expose it out and say, we can't be behaving like this, we all need to behave like professionals, and just communicate effectively with each other. And communicate, I think, most of it is listening, not speaking. the key to communication is shutting up and allowing the other people to tell you their problems or their issues and uncommented. Just let them get it off their chest and then give constructive, positive, helpful feedback to them, and observe and look at what they're saying. Let them know that you're looking right at them and you're supporting them. During the storming phase, it is important to check if everybody's participating within the team as well. So some people will hog the limelight a bit and will tend to always be first in terms of team meetings and things like that. That's okay, as long as everybody gets their fair share. Sometimes with meetings you need to decide how turn taking will occur. Maybe if we've got a meeting for an hour, everybody gets a 15-minute allocated slot. And really the interpersonal communication, so who speaks to whom, is also a very interesting question. And if I'm speaking and somebody interrupts me, how do we handle those interrupts? Is it okay to just say, no, I've nothing to say today? Is silence okay within the meeting? Can we make sure that nobody's dominating things? And again, let's nail down how we come to decisions, and let's make sure all decisions are clearly articulated and even written down. I think in terms of communication, if I was to say the 4 commandments of communication, I would say number 1, all communication takes place at 2 levels. One, in terms of the content that's being sent across, but also at the relationship level between you and the person you're speaking to. Number 2, we cannot not communicate. There is no time when we're not communicating. Even when we're being silent, our body language, our facial expression is communicating to other people. So we need to be aware. Being silent and being sullen and silent doesn't work, because people know you're being sullen and silent. I think another fact we must also remember about communication, number 3, is that often the problem with communication is people assume it's happening when it's not. So you've got to make sure it's the right kind of communication, the clear articulation of what's going on is being communicated. And just keep up to date with your emails and things like that. And number 4, I think, is that talking about the communication, communicating about the communication, we call it meta-communication, is really helpful and useful as well. So are we doing these emails right? Are we having these meetings correct? Things like that. In terms of the common problems you have with teams, you have, and again Tuckman as well with his rhyming, hogging, flogging, frogging and bogging. So we have 4 typical problems with teams: hogging, flogging, frogging and bogging. So what are those terms? Hogging means somebody is hogging the time, or they're talking too much but saying little, so that's hogging. What's flogging? Flogging is flogging a dead horse or beating a dead horse. If there's a topic that's been talked out already ad nauseum, there's no point keeping on harping about it. If the topic is done, it's done. What's frogging? Frogging is jumping from topic to topic and not deciding anything. So we don't want too much frogging in our meetings. And then bogging at the end. What's bogging? Bogging is getting bogged down in an issue. So sometimes we just get bogged down and get stuck and try different ways to do it, and we're moving on, but we're not necessarily achieving anything. So if we get bogged down, maybe it's to step back and try something different. So those are 4 things always to remember: hogging, flogging, frogging and bogging. We move on to the 3rd stage of team formation, which is norming. During this phase, we've gotten over the storming phase, and now we're trying to achieve and describe the norms of the team. We accept the norms of the team in terms of who the members are, what their roles are, who's doing all the work, what are the procedures, how that we accept in the norming stage. Each individual has their own needs and requirements and ways of looking at things, and we're looking at ways in the norming stage of making each individual's perspective, using that to its maximum effectiveness. So once we're getting into the norming stage, what's happening is we've realized this project is going to happen, we're going to be okay, everything will work out because we've got a routine and a process worked out. And really then competition stops and collaboration begins. Hopefully at this stage as well, we're willing to talk about issues or problems that come up, and we're willing to discuss things with a real esprit de corps or team spirit or things like that. When we are discussing issues and giving feedback to people at this stage. It's always going to be descriptive. We're never going to exaggerate or be judgmental. We're only speaking about things from our own point of view, and we don't label people or make labels about things like that. If we're saying to somebody that they're not doing their work, we're going to say, I feel you're not doing their work, so we're always going to use the particular pronoun of I. We're always going to say I think what's happening is. We're not going to condemn them and say, you're not doing any work, because you don't know until you've communicated with them. And people in the norming stage are able to take this feedback and really acknowledge it, ask for clarification. They're able to agree that there are some issues, and they will take the time to understand what's being said. So the norming issue is where everything is getting solidified and concretized. So then the last stage is stage 4, performing. So once we're in the performing stage, we're flying along. Everything has been concretized. We know the strengths and weaknesses of the team now. We know the individual abilities. We have a close attachment. We identify strongly with the team. I personally think when you give a team a name, that helps people identify with the team. When you give it a logo, when you choose a set of colours, things like that. It's amazing how influential they can be on people in terms of inspiring them to work that little bit harder. And I wouldn't like to let the team down. So in the performing stage, there's that real sense of, like a sporting team, we're all pulling together, things like that. Come on lads, give it your best, that kind of thing. So in the performing stage, everybody's committed to shared goals and shared objectives, and everybody's using their skills the best of their ability. Everything is being communicated clearly, and there's awareness of the importance of good interpersonal relationships. Not all teams necessarily achieve or get through all 4 stages of the Tuckman stages of team development, but the ideal team, the goal to aim for is that every team will achieve all 4 stages and be performing to maximum power at the end. Thanks very much.